I do have an obligatory Paul Agger slide. This talk is going to be bringing the dirty, sexy money. And I'm hoping that in the next 10 minutes, not the entire talk, at least the next 10 minutes, you will learn a bunch of new stuff that you didn't know before you entered this room. So, the other day, I was on Pinterest, and I was looking for some new, I love ponies. I was looking for some new ponies to add to my pony board, and so, I went to the Pinterest feed, and I was just like, I was scrolling through, I was trying to find some new ponies to add. But as I scroll through, I noticed that the scroll on this page is just really, really slow. I'm not sure if you can see it, but as I scroll down, it's actually really hard for me to scroll back up because the page feels blocky. Now, I'm not sure why there's so much jank in this page as I scroll down. I'm not sure why it's locking up. As a JavaScript developer, my first instinct is to think that maybe there's a memory leak somewhere here. Maybe there are some objects that are hanging around after a round of GC. The reality is that a lot of the time these days, our performance problems come down to poor paint and rendering times. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I mean in just a second. So I have a feeling there's something up with this page, and something that's probably going to be impacting the frame rate that users are getting. So I open up the Chrome DevTools, and I head on over to Timeline and Frames mode. And now I'm just going to start recording a new session by clicking on the circular button at the very bottom of the page. I'm going to just interact with this page the normal way that any user would. I'm going to go a little bit faster because I want to simulate a few minutes of interaction. So I'm just like scrolling up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And what you're going to be noticing, in addition to the locking, is a lot of green and a lot of purple up in the summary view at the top. And what this corresponds to is rendering and paint time. So I'm just going to go do this for one more second, and let's stop. Now, as I flip through these different frames, I'm experiencing some pretty hefty recalc styles that I probably shouldn't be seeing here, unless, doing some crazy things in the page. Now, I'm also experiencing quite a lot of paint time and quite a lot of layout, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Now, each of these frames that you see up here in the summary views, this box, well, the colors is called the summary view. Each of these bars corresponds to a single frame that Chrome has to render for your application. Now, if you're targeting 60 frames a second, which is what we consider to be the optimal number of frames that you should be trying to target if you're, if you're going to be running any application on a modern device like a laptop or cell phone or something like that, that means that you have about 16.7 milliseconds to get all of your work done for that single frame. That includes things like layout, painting, JavaScript, logic processing, and any other miscellaneous browser stuff in the background. Now, if we're talking about lower-end devices like these phones, you actually don't have 16.7 milliseconds. You have closer to 8 to 10 milliseconds to get everything done in. And if you overshoot that frame budget, you're going to see a small amount of jank in your page, and it's going to vary. It might be more than a small amount. So I've confirmed that there's a little bit of jank in this page. If you take a look at this little legend at the side, I'm not sure how many people can see it, but it basically says 60 frames and 30 frames. So we're overshooting our budget for 60 frames a second, and in some cases we're overshooting our budget for 30 frames a second. We're going to dig dive and find out why this is quite soon. So I've confirmed that there are some jank issues in this page. The next thing that I want to find out is whether Pinterest are taking advantage of GPU acceleration. So in Chrome we have this concept of a composite layer. And the composite layer helps minimize repaints in the page. So if you're using something like Translate 3D with a WebKit transform, that'll get promoted to a composite layer before it gets animated. Now, hardware compositing, or GPU acceleration, is actually a really great thing, because it means that rather than just the CPU being used to put together your page, the GPU is also helping with that process. So if I want to find out, what elements of my page are being manipulated at the GPU level, there's actually a really useful option you can use inside the DevTools to help with this. And it's called Show Composited Layer Borders. Now, as soon as I turn this on, what you're going to notice is that there's this grid that's appeared on the screen. Now, if there's anything in this page that's taking advantage of GPU acceleration, it'll have a yellow or golden border around it. Now, at the moment, I can only see that there's one thing taking advantage of this, and you may not even be able to see it. It's like on the outside of this page. But if I scroll through this page, and I click back, I scroll to the top, and I scroll back down, and I click it again, what I notice is that there's not really anything else taking advantage of GPU acceleration here. And that's something that could give them some good mileage. Now, something that Pinterest could do is maybe take advantage of using something like the Translate Z0 hack, which will actually force GPU acceleration on their DOM elements. And there are tons and tons of tricks like that. I'll actually cover them later on in the talk. But that's one thing that they could be doing. So we've covered GPU acceleration. Now, I actually have some suspicions that there are a ton of unnecessary repaints occurring in this page. And if I want to debug and figure out, what is getting repainted, there's another useful feature here back inside settings in DevTools called Show Paint Rectangles. And what this allows me to do is visualize on screen what areas of my page are being repainted. And it'll just like highlight them in red, so it's really easy to tell. So I've turned on Show Paint Rectangles. I'm just going to close that real quick. Now, I want you to pay attention to what happens. Sorry, I'm going to have to quickly reload this page. So I want you to pay attention to what happens as I scroll through. Every couple of milliseconds, you're seeing a big, bright flash of red. What this means is that Pinterest are actually repainting absolutely everything that you see on screen at the moment. That's a really expensive operation. And it's something that I've seen on quite a few sites that are taking advantage